What is up, Vault Hunters? Chan Nugget here, back with another Borderlands 3 video, guide, tutorial, whatever you want to call it. So today I'm going to show you how to farm legendaries and a ton of XP. So let's just jump right into it. Now, the first thing you're gonna need to do is get at least to the Grave Ward mission. So first off, spoilers out there for anybody who hasn't beaten the game. If you are worried about spoilers, probably go ahead and turn this video off until you have a chance to beat it. But once you fight the Grave Ward in the Eden 6 vault, you now have access to go back and farm him, and anybody that has played Borderlands games is very, very familiar with farming big bosses. So this is the boss that we're going to use in this video. And there's a couple things to make this boss go by very, very quickly, and I'll go over a couple reasons why we're using this boss in the first place. The first one and the biggest one is he has 0 damage cap and no immunity phase. Every other boss that you can quickly spawn into and fight has either an immunity phase or some type of built-in damage cap where you cannot just melt him. The Grave Ward does not have either one of those things. The other thing he has that we're going to exploit the hell out of is giant critical hit spots. He has huge, easily accessible, and massive critical hit spots. So there's 3 ways that you can take advantage of these. The first one actually does require you to beat the game, so you kind of do have to get a little bit further than just Grave Ward. But once you beat the game, you will have access to farm out a weapon called the Queen's or the King's Call. It comes in a couple different variations. I recommend for this method using the King's Call, which has an incendiary damage, or one of the Queen's variations with radiation on it. The Queen's does come in cryo, corrosive, and radiation. Definitely, if you're going to use that weapon, would do radiation. The other 2 weapons are okay, but they're not great. Honestly, the King's Call for this boss, for me, has been one of the best one out there. But the reason we're using this weapon is it has a built-in perk that sends returns ammo to the magazine as long as you're hitting critical hits, and once you hit critical hits, also sends elemental projectiles back at the nearest enemy, which in this case is going to be Grave Ward because he's huge and he's close to everything. So essentially what this turns into is a infinitely fireable, as fast as you can pull the trigger, rocket, cluster bomb, grenade, whatever. It melts, absolutely melts, this gun does, when you're hitting the giant critical zones on the Grave Ward, which are going to be his hands right at the very beginning and then his head after you do enough damage. So the second way to do this, if you don't have that gun and don't really feel like grinding that gun, is if you are playing Moze or Flak, and the reason those 2 characters are important is they have perks that allow you to instantly reload your weapon when you're landing critical hits. So it's very similar to what the Queen's or King's Call does, but it's actually built in to their skill tree. So if you pair this with a high pellet Jacob shotgun, I've specifically used the Speed Load and Hellwalker, which is another legendary that drops a lot from Grave Ward. You can do very, very similar types of damage, very, very high damage, and kind of infinitely shoot that. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the glitch in Borderlands 2 where you could infinitely shoot a Jacob shotgun, but that's exactly what it reminds me of, except it's something they built into this game. And then the last one is using those in conjunction with each other, playing Moze or Flak with the Queen's or the King's Call, and basically being able to just run around instantly and infinitely shooting your pistol, which does just massive amounts of damage. So either one of those 3 methods and using one to grind out the other are going to work no problem. Now, as far as actually killing the boss and grinding out the boss, obviously, once again, if you play Borderlands, you know how this goes. You're going to load into the floating tomb on Eden 6 and just jump right in down to him and get started. So at first, immediately once you jump down there, he's going to tilt his little platform. You can jump in either one of the holes to not get knocked off, and just sit there until he's done tilting the platform. As soon as he is done tilting, run over to the right side. If you're facing him, the right side. If you do have high health, fine, just run over. If you are a little bit lower, or maybe have a build with a little bit lower health, you might want to wait, because he's going to slam his fist down, and that's going to open up this giant yellow orb, where you're just going to start going absolutely bananas on. So no matter what gun you're using, and I'm going to show a couple clips throughout this of each method and how to do each method, no matter what gun you're using, just start going absolutely bananas on that big yellow glowing orb, and that's going to do massive critical damage. The health bar of Grave Ward is split into thirds. As soon as you hit that first third, you're going to sprint over to the very front of the platform, and he is going to tilt his head over and just open up this giant critical spot for you to hit. It's the giant glowing circle right in the middle of his head, and you can just start waylaying into that with whichever weapon you're using, whichever method you're using. And if you do it right or you do it well, you should be able to kill him there. Or if you get lucky with some of the Mayhem mods, which I'll talk about in just a second, you could be able to kill him there. Sometimes, especially if you're doing it solo, you may have to wait one more phase. Or if you're using Flak or Moze, just use your ability, take him out, finish him off, and you're done. Now, after you kill him, depending on what Mayhem you're playing, if you're playing Mayhem 2, which is where I recorded all these videos at, you'll get about 31,000 XP per kill, and usually one legendary. I've gotten pretty much one every time on Mayhem 2. Every once in a while you can get 2 or 3 if you're really lucky, but usually you're getting one legendary. So if your main focus is XP and you want to level up your Guardian rank, I would do this on Mayhem 2 because you can do it a lot faster. Now, if your main focus is grinding out legendary weapons, that's when I would start doing it on Mayhem 3. It is going to take you a little bit longer, especially if you're trying to do it solo, but you're going to get, I have never gotten less than 2 legendaries per run, and I have gotten, including the vault, if you go in the vault and actually loot it, have never gotten less, I've gotten as much as 8 legendaries before. And as far as the actual specific ones, I've gotten a ton of speed load and Hellwalkers, which you can just turn right around and use on this to farm more. And I've gotten pretty much every variation of an Infinity Pistol that is in the game so far. So if you really like the Infinity Pistol from 2 and 1, this is a great spot to farm it, because I have found about 6 of them so far doing this. But that's about it, guys. I will touch on the Mayhem once again a little bit. I've filmed all these at Mayhem 2 just for time purposes. It is very possible, especially if you're very efficient or have a really good build, to do this on Mayhem 3. In fact, it's easy on Mayhem 3. I would, especially if you're doing it with a group, I would always do it on Mayhem 3. But kind of going back to whether you want XP or loot, it is more efficient from an XP perspective to do it on Mayhem 2. You can pretty much always one phase them if you have a decent build. If you're using King's or Queen's Call, you can almost always one phase them, and even with the shotgun, you can pretty much always one phase them. Even at my worst case scenario, and I'll put a clip in here right now, and I'll kind of talk over it. I took off pretty much every skill ability on Flak, every critical hit ability, every whatever ability. I made the worst build that I could think of on Flak, and went in with my King's Call, and still was able to kill him within 4 or 5 minutes. So absolutely worst case scenario, if you have the worst build in the world, you can still kill him between 4 and 5 minutes on Mayhem 2. But as far as XP, you're getting about 31,000 on Mayhem 2 and about 36 on Mayhem 3. So if you want to grind out XP, or you're power leveling your friends or something like that, I do recommend doing this on Mayhem 2 because it goes a lot faster. Especially if you're maybe on console or on a slower PC where your load times are going to be a little bit longer. It's definitely worth doing it on Mayhem 2. But that's it, guys. If you do have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments. If there's something that I maybe glossed over that you want explained a little bit more in depth, or if you have any feedback to share with me, for sure leave that in the comments. If you did find this video helpful, I would enjoy it if you liked it. If you didn't like it, go ahead and leave it a dislike. And if you want more content, enjoyed this content, go ahead and make sure you hit that subscribe button. But other than that, guys, good luck looting, and we'll see you next time. Peace.